Hello all, welcome back to my channel once again. So in this video, let's discuss about preparation and the starting of boiler as mentioned in ETO book task number 8, competence number 1. Yeah, here we go. Hello all, so before getting on to the topic of preparation and starting of boiler, we'll just have a short recap of what we saw in the earlier video about the boiler. So we understood there are two types of boiler, like one is smoke tube, one is fire tube, and we saw about the fire triangle. We saw how the boiler steam is getting transferred from boiler to the consumer to the condenser, then from condenser to the casket tank, and from the casket tank to the boiler. And boiler, the very simple operation is water upon reaching 100 degrees Celsius, it turns into steam, and that is how a steam is generated. So yeah, and other than that, the main thing is how the boiler actually complies with the safety standards of IMO, for the vessel's efficient operation. Anyway, so in this video, let's get into the content of about preparation and starting of a boiler. So how to prepare a boiler before starting it. When a boiler is off, when boiler is not running, what we understand is earlier while the boiler was in operation, smoke was generated using water and fire. So the thing is there will be small fine particles or steam kind of things that got condensed inside the tubes, so we want to purge it. So the very preparation of boiler starts with purging. Purging means blowing inside the boiler with air, so that if there is any dust, we are just blowing out. If we see any dust somewhere, like suppose in this notebook, if we see a dust, we are blowing it, right? Similarly, in a boiler, before starting a boiler, we're just purging it, blowing air and purging it. Anyways, I have made how to start a boiler. The preparation starts very simple. The thing is, first step is like start the fuel oil supply pump, because boiler, as we know, it is an oil-fired boiler. Mostly for oil-fired boiler, yeah, we need oil, we need that is the fuel, then air, then the source of heat as per the fire triangle. So fuel, first thing is fuel, so we need to start the fuel oil supply pump. Then start the burner fan motor. So as soon as you start the burner fan motor, at least for 60 seconds, it will start purging the boiler, okay? And then after, the air servo motor, bring it to 25%. The servo motor has the damper. Start the servo motor, bring the air damper to 25%. 25% is the perfect condition for firing the boiler, because you cannot blow the air all the way. The air has to be controlled, fuel has to be controlled for the ignition, initial ignition. Okay, so 25%, because when there is a fire and there is a heavy air, fire will stop, right? So we have to control the air, and how we are controlling using a damper that is coupled with the servo motor. So that is what they are saying here. Then upon that, you have to start the oil servo motor. Of course, air and fuel is required, right? Then you have to start the oil servo motor. Then when oil and air at correct ratio or at correct mixture is attained, then we have to press ignition push button. And when you press the ignition push button, the ignition transformer is energized. The ignition transformer is energized. And then press oil valves push button, and finally, when you see the flame, when the boiler starts igniting, you can release the ignition and oil valve push button. When the flame scanner flame is on, or when the lamp is illuminated, actually we can see it from the side glass itself. So and finally the flame is established. So this is how you start a boiler. It is very simple. We understand air and fuel for a fuel oil fired boiler is required. So start the air servo motor, start the oil servo motor, but all in a regulated and controlled way. Like for air servo motor, keep the damper at 25%, and oil servo motor, and then press the ignition button. Perfect. This is how the boiler gets started. So yeah, but other than this cannot go very simple. I'll give you some additional points as well. I made some notes. So there are some boiler controls which I wanted to share. There is something called differential pressure transmitter, or sometimes called as DP transmitter. What it does is, like, the output of DP transmitter actually, regulates the feed water, and alarms as necessary. There is a float switch that monitors the level of the water, but the regulation of water inside the boiler is done using this DP transmitter. Maybe they can ask you, what is the application of a differential pressure transmitter in a boiler? So you can very well say that the DP transmitter purpose is to regulate the feed water. And yeah, what is the use of servo motors? Servo motors are used for this controlling oil valve and air dampers. And that's all. Other than that, you have flame eye sensor, then pressure transmitter, that gives high pressure and low pressure alarm. Of course, boiler is generating steam, so there should be, it is like a pressure drum. You have to monitor this pressure inside the boiler, and we actually set at what pressure the boiler has to operate and what pressure the boiler has to trip. So there is something, a pressure transmitter, which monitors the pressure and converts this into electrical signals, which can be seen in a digital and analog format on the meters. So that's all. This is all about preparation as well as starting of a boiler. Nothing much. So just to give you a recap, it is boiler, fuel oil, composite boiler, uses air and fuel, and before starting the boiler operation, you have to purge it. You have to purge it with the air, then start the fuel oil pump, then purge it, keep the dampers at 80% when you're purging, because more air has to flow. Then upon purging, you're going to start the air servo motor and control the air damper at 25% and allow some air inside. Upon injecting the air, now you're going to inject the fuel using oil servo motor. When these two are injected, then press the ignition button, then the flame, or when the ignition happens, release the ignition button. That's all. The boiler is started. That's all. Thanks for watching.